Well, as they say, all good things must come to an end, and we have officially reached the ending pit stop on the Amazing Race Season 37. So let's jump into the two-part finale. Okay, so on night one, part one, however you want to go about that, the remaining teams travel to Portugal, and in the season of twists, they open with another brand new twist called the Valet Roulette, where teams pick keys off a wheel and won't know if the vehicle is manual or automatic until they get into the car, which is obviously a huge deficit because you have no idea what's going to happen. It could change your game, and if you're self-driving, this is terrifying. Yeah. So then teams make their way to the Douro River, where they will paddle a raft across the river before rolling 2 wine barrels uphill to a storage unit to get their next clue. This was funny. The rolling the barrels, everyone kind of struggled with, but what was really funny was the paddling of the raft. Like every team, I feel like had like minor communication issues, but also different strategies. Yeah. And it was so funny to watch.
I was actually surprised that Alyssa and Josiah had those weakest communication and kind of started to a little bit bicker, not much, but a little bit.
But what I love about Alyssa and Josiah is as soon as it's done, Josiah's like, I'm so sorry, babe. That was not me. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm like, and that is why they're such good characters for the show. Okay, so then after receiving the next clue, they're going to do the roadblock for part one of the finale, which is where one teamer must don medieval armor and hit 3 moving archery targets with a bow and arrow. Here's what's so funny is we totally saw Jack and Carson nerd out on this because this was like totally in their kind of medieval Dungeons and Dragons nerdy gamer dreams, and they were so excited to do it. And it was funny because Carson did it, but Jack was jealous that he got to do it. And honestly, no one like overly struggled with this. So I feel like
I was surprised how well everybody could shoot a bow. You know,
I think I would do horrible. Maybe think of like summer camp when you would do archery, and I'm like, it would not be cute.
The armor would have been the hardest part. Just how constricting and heavy it probably would have been.
Yeah. So there was that, and then we see it's really. I feel like this season they've definitely explored with like different ways to get around cities, which I've been enjoying. So they ditched kind of the self-driving and the travel on the Kampenha Railway, if I'm saying that right. So they venture on this railway to get to their next clue. But what's crazy is, one thing about Europe, if you don't know, is there's a lot of delays and a lot of strikes all the time on public transportation. And so the first 2 teams, which were Carson and Jack and Holden, get to the next part of this episode or challenge pretty quickly. But Alyssa and Josiah get stopped because they get to the railway just before all these delays happen. So then Jonathan and Anna, who are pretty far behind in this episode, are able to catch up with them, and they all end up on the same train. And I'm like, no.
I was so annoyed because you have Jonathan, stereotypical Jonathan,
I know,
complaining at Anna. And I loved how when they finally got on the train, we had the side-by-side comparisons of the couple. How Jonathan was just being all rotten and mean to Aunt Anna about everything, and then you had Josiah. Literally, a split screen. I was like, you know, the editors did this on purpose.
Oh, 1,000%.
Loved it.
Yeah, no, it was insane. So then, once they get their next clue, the teams have to figure out a tile puzzle and then plaster it to the wall. This was really interesting. So basically, they were given all of these tiles, which created a picture, which was actually a clue to where the pit stop was. And so you kind of assemble it kind of on this, I don't know, working station, if you will. And then once you get it approved, it had to be correct. Then you had to plaster each tile onto the wall into the kind of this frame space. But I thought this was a really interesting challenge. I like that, and I like that it kind of revealed the next part of the pit stop, which was interesting. So no shocker here because they carried a great lead through really this whole episode. Carson and Jack get first. Han and Holden get second. They've really been on the come up, honestly. And then Jonathan and Anna are able to bypass Alyssa and Josiah and get third place, which means Alyssa and Josiah are unfortunately eliminated just right before the finale.
So sad.
I loved this team, you guys. I loved this team. I was rooting for them, especially in the second half. They just really caught my attention for many reasons. And I was so sad they went home. But I did get to chat with all 4 of the final 4 teams. So you'll see Alyssa and Josiah's online. They also announced the morning after the finale that they're pregnant, which is so exciting because they talked about kind of the next step in having a baby throughout the season.
So happy for them. I loved how she did the announcement too.
Yeah.
Josiah has TikTok. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it.
You should go watch it
on there.
Yes. Okay. So then you guys were at the very last episode, the finale, part 2 of the finale. So the final 3 travel back to the States because, as we know, most always the show ends back in the States. So for the final leg, the teams are competing in Miami. So after touching down, whatever, in the airport, the teams travel by taxi to a nearby marina to hop on a speed boat where they'll get their next clue. And that clue then reveals that the finale is a scramble. So we've seen this done a few times in finales. So essentially how this works is there are 3 different challenges that can be competed in any desired order that the teams choose. But on this specific one, they'll have to collect a kind of wooden puzzle piece after each completed challenge to then figure out after it's all done what the next clue is. So here's the 3 different challenges they have to do. They have save, where one team member essentially drives what is like a jet ski with a team member on the back on a raft to retrieve a mannequin out in the water, saving them and bringing them back to shore. This is what they said is kind of like a typical like lifeguard practice they have on the beach. And then they have soar, which I would have peed my pants if I had to do this.
This one would have been so fun.
It would have been fun, but I couldn't. I think it would have been hard, but I couldn't tell. Anyway, so one team member from each team had to stay up on a flyboard for 60 seconds, which if you don't know what that is, that's essentially this kind of like engineering contraption where you put your feet on this box and then it kind of launches you in the water and you're kind of just hanging by this like tube below you. And so you had to hold yourself up for 60 seconds. But what was interesting is they kind of quickly were like, okay, here's the tricks from the, the pros, they do it. And then the biggest thing that I thought was interesting is they mentioned that holding on to your life vest as opposed to like trying to hold your balance like this is what would keep you up.
Interesting.
But all teams struggled with this, which was like no team got it like right away. Yeah. It was interesting though in the sense, a couple things. Jack did this and he did very well, even though it took him a lot of attempts. Han did a great job, but it was funny because she was kind of cocky about it, like talking about like, oh, I've got this, I've been in the water, I'll do really well with this, and she really struggled. But I think she was just getting her own head.
Well, and she said once she took a breath, she was able to get it, but she was mad at herself after she got it.
Yes.
She's like, I should not have taken that long.
Yes, and then we see Anna struggle. So as we know, we learned this earlier in the season, back in, I believe, Bali. We learned from Anna that she had kind of a near drowning experience as a kid, so she's really traumatized by water, and so she was like, I should have done this, I should have had Jonathan do this, and she really struggles, but she does complete it, which I didn't see.
I will say, here's my thought when this was happening. Like, if you're going to go on the Amazing Race, you should know water is going to be in it.
Yeah.
Like, what was it, last season or the season before where they went, like, scuba diving for their clues in Iceland? Like,
I do agree, but I will say this season did feel very water heavy. Like, there was a lot of water challenges, more than I feel like I've seen in the last few seasons, but I don't know. I guess I don't know what's based off that. So the final challenge on the scramble is sail. So together, each duo hops in a little tiny sailboat, and they must make it around 6 buoys. What's interesting is they really had little to no instruction except for these little kids around them doing it. So you kind of had to just go off what you knew. What pretty much all teams ended up doing was taking these paddles that they had and just going that way because they couldn't figure out the sailing contraption, which I don't know that I would have either.
I mean, without actually having verbal instructions, it would be hard to tell exactly what somebody's doing and mimic them,
Yeah. So then after all challenges are completed, the teams then put their differing wooden puzzles together, which sends them to Calle Ocho, which is kind of this, historic Cuban neighborhood in Miami. And then from there, they're given their next clue, which is the final challenge of the season, which we know that every final challenge right before they go to the last pit stop to determine the winner always has something to do with kind of like memory based off this season. So this time around, it was interesting. So they go inside this local film studio and assemble a gigantic Amazing Race puzzle that spelled out the show's name, Amazing Race. But what was interesting is the letters, you had to match up kind of pictures from the city that was on the episode, along with behind it, you had these sticks of different twists throughout the season that had to match up with the episode or leg in which they happened.
I thought this one seemed surprisingly easy compared to past ones.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just like, I don't know. I guess it depends on the, like how good you are assembling all this stuff. Yeah. But it didn't, I think you're right. I think there have been more challenging ones in the past. So, okay, you guys, here we go. The season 37 winners of The Amazing Race were Jack and Carson, which we were really excited for them. They were such a good team to win. They were just so strong throughout the whole season. These last few legs especially, they really, really held up kind of that good reputation they had going all season.
Well, and I would say they were one of the few teams that kept a positive attitude the whole time. They got 3 hours behind and they still kept a positive attitude.
I would totally agree with you. Han and Holden, which kind of shocked me, they ended up getting second place, which was great. They also had this incident we forgot to mention in the finale where they actually get in a wreck.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So Han is driving and hits a car, and they literally have to get out and talk to the guy, and the guy's like trying to collect insurance, and they're like, listen, we're literally in a competition for $1 million, and Holden thankfully knows Spanish, so he's talking to the guy and trying to convince him to let him out of it. It is a whole mess.
Well, and then we forgot too that Josiah and Alyssa, somebody bumped them in that other episode. I thought it was interesting, two minor accidents in both episodes.
I will say though, like I said, I talked to all teams, and Han and Holden were like, because I said minor too, and they were like, that was not minor. That took about 45 minutes to figure out.
Oh my gosh.
And they were like, and literally if Holden had not known Spanish, we would have been totally out of it, because they were like, the guy really wanted to do stuff, and they were like, and fair, but we're in the race.
That's crazy to realize how far back Jonathan and Anna were then. I didn't think it was that far apart.
So this is what's crazy. So then Jonathan and Anna are third place. So like I said, I talked to all three teams. I learned from Jonathan and Anna's interview that they were actually, I don't ever know the time, but they were extremely far behind Jack and Carson. And the reason why, so, okay, backing up to, you brought up how Han on the boat was like really upset with herself, saying it should have not taken so long. Anna was saying at that point, both of those teams knew that Jack and Carson were going to win because Jack and Carson actually left like, I think they said like 25 to 30 minutes before either of the girls. So they were like, it's not over, but basically. Like Anna's like, I know it's going to take me a while. Han knew that she had a lot of time to make up. And so I think that's why they were upset. And then on top of that, they had the wreck. And so there was like a lot of issues with that. And then even then they said after Han and Holden left the puzzle, that had been like 10 minutes before them. So they were like, there was no way to make up time.
Once again, I say they need to start putting a clock.
I know.
In the episodes so we can see what the time-wise is.
Yeah. But overall, you guys, I absolutely love this season. It was such a fun season to review. It was such a good season. Every team, every episode, you were never really sure who was going to come in first place. Loved the casting of this season also. And an exciting kind of twist, the season of twists. The show is coming back this fall. We took kind of a year gap where it didn't come back this past fall, but it's coming back this fall. I hear a rumor that the cast will be made up of former Big Brother players, which will be interesting. So think of like Big Brother and Amazing Grace kind of combining worlds. So yeah, that'll be back this fall. I don't know the premiere date yet, but so I'm excited for that. But yeah, it's been an amazing season. Congrats again to Jack and Carson. You can check out all the interviews at ozarksfirst.com to get more on intel from the contestants. But I think that's it for this time around, you guys. Amazing Grace season 37.